Problem-based learning (PPL) and the use of cultural matrix. A case study of first year undergraduate in University of Malaya, Malaysia.
Thanks to Mr. Chairperson. Very good afternoon to all members of the floor. My name is Salim from Faculty of Science, University of Malaya, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. My presentation today entitled Reframing Ethics course for Science Students by Problem-Based Learning (PBL) and the use of a culture metric, a case study of undergraduates in the University of Malaya, Malaysia. Okay. Technically, this research explores the development of ethics course and effectiveness of the problem-based learning method to teach ethics for science undergraduates of Faculty of Science in the University of Malaya. So this course is actually based on the discipline of ethics, which primarily utilizes the application of basic ethical theories, such as the utilitarianism and deontology, as well as the principalism, that is autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, and justice, and also methodik norms for the scientists. Various issues, such as analytical research and publication, laboratory safety and risk, as well as animal and environmental ethics, were given to students as case studies. I'll show you later some examples of the case studies. So the value-added ethics learning session is provided for science undergraduates, which consists of the application of ethical theories and principles with the reflection of inherent religious value systems through the employment of an expanded ethical matrix. And later, the decision will be assessed through harm test, faith test, professional test, and also publicity test, and be presented in the form of poster presentation. Method. So this study was carried out throughout 3 semesters, beginning 2015 to the end of 2016. And the data was retrieved from the students' online survey called Course and Teaching Evaluation. Okay, before we talk about or discuss how to teach ethics to science students, we need to think of 2 important questions. Why we should teach ethics to science students, and next, what do we hope to achieve from ethics course? Okay, according to literature reviews, the talented students with high ideals might be lost if ethics education is ignored. Because ethical issues constantly arise in science, and scientists must learn how to deal with them in real-life practice. According to other authors, have noted that the more influential science becomes, the more ethical issues become associated with scientific practice directly, and scientists are increasingly required to participate in the value questions born from new knowledge and new technologies. And many undergraduate students experience particularly difficulties when they undertake study philosophical courses, even when these courses cater to their presumed interest in science. For instance, classes on science and ethics, as well as philosophy of science. And according to Johnson, 3 specific issues have been identified when teaching ethics to science students. Number 1, lack of the necessary skills writing, reading, and so on in order to do well in philosophy subjects generally, okay, especially including ethics. Their not knowing, understanding, or being contented with culture and expectation of philosophy, and finally having the antagonistic orientations toward a discipline which they may recognize as either challenging or inferior to their chosen career path in science. So therefore, if ethics want to be introduced to science students, it must be redesigned to facilitate this learning. Alright, so in this aspect, this research explores the role of the problem-based learning method as a tool to teach ethics to science students. Okay? So this diagram shows the basic components in PBL, where actually we give students a problem or case study, and the student will act as a problem solver, and this will be coaching by lecturers. According to Dutch et al. 201, PBL can assist students to think critically and be able to analyze and solve complex real-world problems. And they can work in team and small group as well as demonstrate versatile and effective communication skill, both verbal and written. Okay, so the case study here is actually about the course in University Malaya, the so-called ethics safety. This is the compulsory course, and we have more than 200 students per semester. So it begins with the lecture on the philosophy of research ethics, okay, which constitutes the integrated focus on the scientific community, and also the discussion then developed into the responsibility of the scientists to the public. Okay, so this is the learning phases. So we start with the number one is the enculturation phase, where we introduce the ethical theories and also principles to students. And we have the second phase, so-called the conceptual phase, where we put ethics in context. Here is actually, we bring the religious perspective in the ethical reasoning. And the final stage is the integrative phase, where we give a case study to students for them to resolve. Okay? And this is the ethical matrix as a tool for ethical analysis. Okay, so we need to consider the principles of beneficence, rights to autonomy and also justice. Okay, while we evaluating the ethical issues. And we expand the ethical matrix with the inclusion of the diverse community concerned in Malaysia. So for example, we have the Muslim community, we have the Buddhist community, Hindu community, and also the Christian community in Malaysia. Okay, all right. So this is actually some sample of ethical dilemma that we give to students. It is a very basic yet critical problem. Like for example, the graduate student has been working in the lab for a year. What she hopes will be her PhD dissertation research. She has been troubled for the last several months by the possibility that her advisor may be manipulating data used in his publication. This past week, his publication. This past week, he has just discovered what she believed to be incontrovertible evidence that some of his published data, in fact, been fabricated. So it is actually dealing with the data manipulation as well as the relationship between student and supervisor, and also the issues of transparency. Okay, this is another we call that case study. Right? So execution of higher learning has built a new multi-story building to be used as a chemical laboratory for teaching and research purpose. However, the building not well designed and need to be rectified. And on the other hand, the institute also plans to purchase a piece of instrument considered to be very useful for both teaching and research. So now we have to conflict between two choices. Okay, now, so we introduce actually steps to ethical decision making to students. Number one, they need to identify and state the problem. Okay, all right. So number two, they need to identify the relevant factors and also actors. All right, in the problem. Then they need to generate potential courses of action. They need to brainstorm and group as many possible courses of action as possible. And after that, they need to test the option, okay, through the harm test, mother of faith test, professional test, and also publicity test. For the harm test, they need to actually consider that does this option do less harm than the alternative. Faith test, what would my religion think about the decision? Professional test, what would my profession ethics committee say about this option? And finally, about the publicity test, whether they want this option to be published in mass media. Okay, so this is actually the matrix. Okay, so students need to have like option 1, option 2, option 3, option 4. They may have more options, and they need to test through the harm test, mother faith test, professional test, and also publicity test. Okay, so how we want to fill in this, what we call that, this table. Okay, so the assessment as decision is based on the grade. For example, if it is a positive sign for the benefits and negative sign is for harm. Okay, so we need to evaluate for every test, harm test, faith test, professional test, and also the publicity test. Okay, all right. So findings. What did students think of the course and PDL? So we asked students about the several questions, such as whether the learning experience in this course helped students to improve their soft skill, whether the course content is relevant and can be applied for current and future use, whether the course can stimulate the intellect, and whether the content is well organized, and also whether the content meets the learning outcomes specified, and finally whether the course content is interesting. So this is actually the result for the 3 semesters, semester 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so this is the scores of students for 3 semesters. All right, so in summary, the percentage of students scoring above 75 marks show a marked increase. Okay, and in the most recent semester compared to the first semester, it was introduced. No students scored below 60 marks for the 2 recent semesters, and also the missed scores for the 3 semesters were increasing respectively. Alright, so this result look promising and show that students have a good understanding and able to produce good quality outcomes. Okay, so here actually the written comments from students through students who enjoyed the course for the 3 semesters. Okay, so here is actually the most interesting is that the course is new to me as it teaches me science, ethics, and laboratory safety when conducting experiment. Okay, so this is other comments from students. Okay, all right. So as a conclusion, this course aims to instill ethics awareness and responsibility in addition to the essence of good science. So this research shows that bioethics may be engaged and appreciated by people across the globe for a sure reason. There is a large and structured moral reasoning exercise which affords intense critical thinking experience to make students better and articulate thinkers. So it is also makes students learn some social cultural aspects and history of the Western value system of which bioethics principles are based. With that, thank you very much.
Now all these 6 papers are open for discussion. Kindly identify yourself.
For the next presentations, and I want to ask to the Professor Yes. As a human as a creator and transhuman as a creative beings, how can they be peacefully coexist in the aspect of creativeness compared to the God and human relationship? Actually, 2 days ago, Professor Park Sang-won, he was the futurist. He thinks that we discuss about the transhumans can against the human. Human should be afraid of the transhumans. So we discussed about them. At the time, the Professor Park Sang-won said that he requested to the researchers of transhumans. The transhumans do not have the judge of bad and good. So in compared with the God created the human, God do not want to human have the judge about good and bad. So can it be compared like this?
Thank you. Good question. So I think that the short say is good in here. So I was announcing about transhumanism, and yeah, actually I say negatively is the transhumanism. However, I wanna say only simple. So, transhumanism has neutral, however, it has desire of human, and sometimes desire can do so this, this, and I think that we cannot pretend transhumanism plan. However, we gotta think about that more and more in future. That's my answer.
Next. Yeah. Yeah, go sir. Yeah.
I have some comment and my personal reflection on Buddhism, which was presented by Professor Kim. Thank you for your inspiring talk, which was very insightful. And my name is Yoshi Satoya. I come from Japan. I'm a researcher of bioethics and doctoral candidate. And as you mentioned, the Yogacara Buddhism is one of the main traditions in Mahayana Buddhism. And Yogacara Buddhism also was very influential in our history at some point. And I think it's basically, as I understand, the Yogacara Buddhism said, our mind is real, but the object just the image or state of our consciousness. That's how I understand the Yogacara Buddhism. But what I think is important in Buddhism in general is that our suffering comes from the huge gap between the reality how things are and our human approach to that reality or what we want. So, for example, there's one of the teachings that we have in Buddhism is the ungraspability of things. Things are not seeable in a way that we see them, or things are not graspable in a way that we grasp them. So there is a huge, which I think is fundamental, the gap between this reality and our approach, how we see them, how we see life and this. So I think one way to get out of suffering, according to the teaching of Buddhism, is not to change this reality, but try to change our attitude towards this reality. So this is just my reflection and comment. But if you have any more things to add, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comment.